Hi and welcome to AXSchat. Delighted that today we have Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer with us, Jenny Lay-Flurrie. Jenny, thank you very much for joining us. I've been excited about this for quite some time now, so I'm glad the day has finally come. I'm really pleased that you could join us. So tell us a little bit about your story, because it's really quite compelling, and then how you ended up at Microsoft and working in the job that you're doing now, because it's a fantastic role that you have.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this too. So there's a quick story and a long story. I'm a Brit. I was born in the middle of England. I've got a fellow Brit on the call, so I can say it's Sutton Coldfield as opposed to Birmingham. Most documentation says Birmingham. It's a little bit outside of there. Dragged up there, went to normal school, comp school. My sister and I both had varying levels of deafness as kids. My sister was definitely born with congenital deafness. Myself was a gradual gig, got from early age through measles, hearing infection, all that sort of stuff that sort of compelled it and has slowly declined it over the years. My education, I was a musician, or that was my intent. I went on and did a music degree up in Sheffield, and then discovered that, like most musicians, it doesn't exactly pay the bills. And I was very much starving. And so honestly got a job in IT just to pay the bill at that time. And I wanted to work in a fancy building, and I ended up at the Daily Mirror. Which at the time was being edited by Piers Morgan.
Okay.
It was a very fascinating journey. And then over time, that really just taught me a love of computing. I didn't really honestly know much about it before then. My student house was full of nerds and engineers, but not a lot in a music degree to do with computing. But I very, very much learned that it was just, it was fun. Problem solving was fun. And so I went on from there to a few companies, Cable and Wireless. I think one of them is now called Energist back then, T-Mobile, and landed at Microsoft in 2005 in London. 12 years later, I'm still here.
Yes, but you're in a different role now, and the role is that of Chief Accessibility Officer. So tell us a little bit about what the role encompasses, because Microsoft was one of the first companies to create a role of Chief Accessibility Officer. So you're actually the second person to occupy the post, so there's some continuity. And I think Microsoft are definitely the first company to appoint a second CAO.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my journey into it was a little haphazard. I actually joined in Europe to run support across Europe for things like Hotmail and online advertising. So I was in a technical leadership role. But what I very quickly fell into was the disability employee community at Microsoft. And that was really my path into this. And no one, including me, could have foresaw where it would have led. So I actually was part of the deaf community. Then, because I'm nosy, I joined all the others. Found that they were saying a lot of the same things. And then 6-7 years ago, I left that career and moved full-time into accessibility within the company. And then in January this year, I became the CAO. And really, we've reshaped the Chief Accessibility Officer position and office a little bit, just to reflect the moving of the times and where technology is going. So a lot of my responsibilities clearly in partnership and collaboration across the company on products, services, websites. A lot of what I think my predecessor was doing, but also trying to take that higher as much as we can. Compliance is one thing, but candidly, I go for a lot higher than that. Compliance being just the legal bar. But then also, for a company this size, which is over 110,000 people, I'm very, very much about how we can build connections to customers, to partners, to charities, to NGOs, and how I can do stuff to make it part of our culture here. So there's a lot of investment in inclusive hiring, in innovation, in training, and other areas that just make it really part of how we live and breathe. So it sustains, it legs, and ultimately it doesn't need me and my team then driving it in every place to make things happen. The company drives itself. Does that make sense?
It does, and yes, it's a fascinating story too. And I was in the musical field myself. I love music, and I think music and technology really does go arm in arm. So it's exciting to watch your journey. I also am excited about your journey for multiple reasons. I've been a big fan of Microsoft for a long time. Microsoft is always in the accessibility and the disability inclusions like no other brand all over the world. I've gone to Turkey, I've gone to Egypt, and Microsoft's sitting at the table with us. And so that's exciting. But I also, as a woman, I was really proud when Microsoft put you in this role, Jenny, because I think, and I love that you came up through being part of Microsoft's community of employees with disabilities, and that you're a woman and a technologist. I just love the story. And I know that you've showed leadership all over the world. I've seen you very active on like with the USBLN and other organizations that try to really support brands, making sure that they're really focused on inclusion. But also, Microsoft is into inclusion in their branding. Some of the powerful commercials that Microsoft has put out is amazing. And the most recent things I'm seeing, which I'm going to give you credit for, Ginny, is what you're doing to make sure technologists with autism are included in the workforce. So to say that I'm a fan just doesn't say enough. I know that Antonio Neal and we just really, really applaud the work that is being done at Microsoft by many people, but certainly under your leadership as the Chief Accessibility Officer. So tell us more about why Microsoft cares about the community of people with disabilities. I know it's so easy to say, of course we care, but you actually you're actually doing things that really truly include our community in a powerful way.
Well, first of all, you're far too kind, but I will take it. And just know, and I said this before we were recording, I do feel as though I'm in the presence of social and disability royalty today. So just know that the feeling is very much reciprocated. Yeah, no, I think inclusion is really the grounding on which some of what we've been learning internally. And I think what you've seen over the last year, or probably a little bit more, is that we've started to share that more externally. But it was definitely very consciously an internal thing before, which was, and by the way, we're not perfect, right? There's definitely things that we could do more of. And, you know, I get an email every day that grounds me on our opportunity from someone, right? But I do think that at the core of Microsoft, we have this mission, and this mission came with our new CEO, but it was really embedded before that. He was actually the sponsor of that disability community before he became CEO. And that mission is to empower people in organizations. And I just love that thread, because empowerment is ultimately what we're after, right? And then you take that into the disability accessibility community and you think about how to interpret that. And it's really actually very simple, which is that the only way to empower is to have people, advocates, interested parties, parents. I think parents are huge, being those voices and being empowered to elevate, what do I need to be successful? What do I not need? What do I need to get out the way? What innovations are going to change my life? What do I need from accessibility that's going to make my life not just easier, but just go and do magical things? I mean, it really does come from empowering that community to do more and to be that voice and to be those experts, because that's what they are. So if you take that as a notion and then you put the right processes in place to really harness it, that's really some of the grounding we come from. So a couple of things that I think are quite compelling with it. One is nearly 7 years ago, we had our first internal ability summit, which was that employee community. And I remember standing out the room sort of cheering because we had 80 people, and that was, you know, a magic thing. And then the last 2-3 years, we've had nearly 1,000. Wow. And I think that just talks to the momentum of that community and the empowerment. And it's not just people with disabilities, it is parents, allies, advocates, and engineers that want to learn from the experts. So it's a real mix. And then I think the one that is definitely getting a lot of interest at the moment is the autism program. And while there's been hiring across the spectrum, I did a guest blog on the Department of Labor site this weekend, actually got posted on Saturday, sort of covering all the site and the details. But the autism one came out of that notion, which was how could we get more talent, keyword, into the company with disabilities and help, you know, with this journey. And we just found that autism was candidly just, you know, you got an unemployment rate of over 80%, around 84 is the latest stat I saw. Stupidly talented group of folks. And really the blockage was getting people through the interview process and then making sure people had the right support mechanisms afterwards. So it was taking a different lens to recruitment and how you interview. And once you figure that out, it's not rocket science. I mean, and ultimately we've ended up with their kids just because they're younger than me, right? Most people are now. But we've ended up with talent coming into the company with resumes that are just so humbling. Some of them have been helped. Others, you know, the headline could be, I work 3 hours a week at Safeway. But at the bottom, you find that there's a computer science, data science degree, sometimes master's, sometimes PhD. And these guys are not getting into the workplace and have some just humbling stories when they come here. And over 50% now of those that we've hired, it's small, we're planning to grow, but over 50% previously tried to get into Microsoft and weren't hired. And yet look at the talent that we've now been able to bring in. So yeah, I think that kind of, there's a lot more we can do, but we're learning a lot, I'd say, through programs like that one.
And you know, something that is interesting, I created a company, Tech Access, many years ago, well, back in 2001. And I could not have had a company like Tech Access that I grew to a multi-million-dollar business, which sounds great, but more importantly, over 80% of my employees were technologists with disabilities. And we used the Microsoft operating system, all of the Microsoft applications, and you're right, Microsoft's not perfect, but nobody's perfect. We don't even know what perfect looks like. And so many of the technologists that work for my company, they could work for me, telework and telecommuting, because of the earlier efforts that Microsoft had made as far back as like Windows, you know, I'm going to forget, it was the Windows before Windows 95. So Microsoft has been on this journey a really long time, longer than I think most people realize. And I know that because that's one reason why I'm a big fan of Microsoft. And I don't only use Microsoft products, but I use MacBook Air, but I use Microsoft products on my MacBook because I love Microsoft applications. So kudos for the ongoing work that you are doing, Jenny. And I don't know if you want to make a comment on that, but I'm also going to turn it over to Antonio. So to you, Jenny, and then we'll go to Antonio.
Yeah, no, I'm smiling. I do think, you know, technology has the power to empower and to disempower, and I think that's something that's very, very conscious from us. We've definitely had some moments of brilliance over the years, and you know, dating back 20 years or more. And yeah, we're only a 40-year-old company, so
Wow.
We'll take that. But I do think we've also had some moments where it hasn't gone. I'd say the resurgence and a lot of the features coming out this year, in particular Office 365, Office for Mac, Windows 10, Edge, we've seen some significant investment across the board this year, and more to come. But I know that some may not be aware of all of those. One of the things we're trying to do is get those products firmly out there and get more feedback in. That's really one of my big standing points right now is help us, give us the blunt feedback. I can take it. But I do think there's a ton of features. Neil's already chiming in. There are a ton of features that, and investments, particularly on the narrator platform. We're working on an AT strategy. And then there's great leadership in Office for Mac, hopefully, just really helping to make that an accessible product that can be used. Because we, like you, there's a lot of people who do use Macs and the Microsoft Office platform on there. And I think the wonderful, a beautiful product that we're hoping to expand over time. But yes, technology has that power. You need a lot more.
Antonio?
Well, Jenny, I'm based in Cork, Ireland, right in the south of the country. And a few weeks ago, I was at a conference for HR professionals, where somebody was showing us a presentation, and you have the feeling that they were adding the word diversity to the slides just because they need to have the word there. So you were talking about hiring talent. So how do you think you can influence, agencies that you work with, not only in the United States but all over the world, to have awareness about the importance of having a process that doesn't exclude people from applying for the job, and sometimes that the fact that when they are using LinkedIn, or if they use LinkedIn to do a research, they don't use it in the way that the fact that they use a certain type of keywords would immediately exclude people. So how do you think you can influence them in order to be more inclusive when they hire?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think that there's certain things for any company. One, you've got to have the right connection to your strategy, right? And I think that's been a key thing for us. If we're going to produce accessible technology and technology that works for all people and all organizations, that includes people with disabilities. There's over 1 billion in the world, as you well know. So for us, the actual link's really, really direct, which is we need people in the company, and stress need, if we're going to deliver on our mission. So that's one. You've got to have the connection, and you've got to have the connective tissue. Two, I think as a company in the journey that we've definitely gone on is making sure that our own house is pretty good, right? And that's simple stuff often. Making sure your career site, where all your jobs are posted, wherever they are, is accessible and is actually not just, it's not just compliant, it's really usable, and you've tested it with people. And your website accessibility is not the easiest sometimes, depending on how you've coded stuff. So that can take some effort, and I know our IT team here really took that seriously in making sure that it was a good experience, right? Because ultimately, people with disabilities have a choice as to where they go, and I want to make sure that their experience is amazing when they're applying for a job. The other one is really putting it out there, and we put all of our hiring information onto one site. What we found is that people wanted to know, what is your accommodations process? How do you have a commute? There were lots of simple details that people wanted to know when applying for a job. Do I self-identify on interview? Do I tell people what I need? And clearly the answer is yes. Right? I'm a proponent of that. You identify it. Allow us to make that easy for you. So we put all that information on Microsoft.com/inclusive hiring. That's where we put everything. But I do think that, you take that, there's a couple of things as you look at outside the US. I think, one, we're a mothership in Seattle. It is raining here. We're definitely in Seattle. That means that a lot of our main information where we first put stuff is in the US, but we're clearly targeted to share it more broadly. And so I was actually in the UK a couple of weeks ago, and Brussels, having some of the same conversations. What talent do we need to go after? How can we make sure that we've got our house in order and that everything is beautifully laid out. And there's definitely work to go as you go by market, because each site is different by market, localized and what have you. So yeah, we've definitely got some work to do. But the second thing is also, and the reason I love organizations like the USBLN, is that no company has this beautifully, perfectly done. And so the USBLN and the British Disability Forum I met with while I was in London, it's a great forum to have those conversations, because you're sitting in the room with Pricewaterhouse, BBC, and other companies that are going on the same journey and are problem solving the same things. And so the autism one, Neil on my team spends a lot of his day getting feedback from SAG, who are the ones who helped us with our own launch of our program, but now sharing with others, Ford, Ernst & Young, and others. This isn't a space where we compete. There is more than enough talent to go round. We should be sharing and collaborating on what we've learned, and hopefully benefiting others. And then honestly, we get a whole wealth of understanding coming back to us. So it's that mutual exchange of information that I think is going to make this a better gig, right? And I think we're not the only company that has a goal to hopefully over time change the unemployment rate. I think it's a shocker, and that's not an overnight goal. But I don't like, I don't like little goals. Let's go for it. I think, and there's a multitude of things that we can do to help with that, and it's going to take time. But that has to be the goal that we have. It just has to be.
Just continue in that, but looking to considering that Microsoft has offices around the world and in many different countries and across cultures. How do you see that the work that you are doing as impacting in all those countries as well? From people looking in Arabic language, from Portuguese, Spanish, or any other language around the world.
Yeah, I'd say there's definitely pockets around the world where there's an enormous amount of interest and passion that's coming up. And it's not every country and every market, but there's definitely a number of markets where we've seen that coming up. Europe is an incredible hotbed, I think, at the moment. I just hired a guy from the company Toby, very fortunate to have him join a few weeks ago, and he'll be based in the UK for that reason. But with the coverage over Europe, a guy called Hector Minto will be sitting over there. Now I can't say it right. Hector Minto, M-I-N.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And he's going to be helping us sort of on the ground in Europe, which I think is important. Having folks outside of mothership and on region and on time zone. And hopefully over time we'll be able to do more of that. There's definitely a lot. I'm beginning to see a lot of interest in Asia, which I think is fantastic, and I hope to see more of it. And in some markets, you've got a variety of different issues. Some markets are socially ready for some of the conversations, and other markets you are battling some of that as well. I was educated by Mark from the European Deaf Union when I was over in Brussels. There are some countries in Europe where if you're deaf, you're not allowed to drive, which is glaring to me. And I'm severely, profoundly deaf. My speech is very deceptive, but technically I wouldn't be allowed to drive in some countries, which would impact my ability to work, clearly. So we've got, that's a human right as far as I'm concerned. So we've got some ways to go in some countries of getting some of the foundations in place, and others are more at the stage of help me to find talent. So it really depends, I think. But no, to your point, I think Europe's going to be a fantastic market going forward. India, Mexico, Brazil, there's others that I think are definitely coming up as well.
Yeah. Good. That's good to hear. I'm very interested in the recruitment side of things. I'm a member of the BDF task force in the UK. I'm sorry I couldn't meet you on the 20th. I've just been traveling. I'm particularly interested with the autism stuff because I don't know who you've been working with, but I've been doing some work on neurodiversity with the BBC, and particularly a young lady called Lena Hack, who is doing amazing stuff with virtual reality and also looking at alternative ways of interviewing and also creating building accessibility guidelines for people who are neurodiverse, because it's not just a case of getting people through the door, it's about making sure that people are successful once they're in work, and it's really key that people who need different things are understood, and there's some good work going on there. I'm also really interested to learn a bit more about what those experiences are doing into changing the way that you develop your products, because a lot of people who are neurodiverse, so dyslexic, dyspraxic, etc., do have accessibility needs, but they're not the needs that have been commonly understood and served by a lot of tech companies in the past. So, for example, I know that you've done some work with OneNote around dyslexia, but are there plans to expand that work into your main product suite?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great topic, and you can imagine one of the unintended consequences of launching the autism hiring program was the resurgence that it gave within our employee community. A lot of people with autism and other disabilities definitely cropped up and started identifying across the span of, I would say, the invisible cognitive spectrum, and also I separate the two, and you know that's just the way I've bracketed it for now. But between cognitive and mental or neural, I don't like the term mental disabilities. I think that's just a gag reflex we have, and I'll move on. But really between things like bipolar, anxiety, depression, which is a massive segment and often misunderstood, as well as cognitive, which is the biggest growth segment. So you're clearly a company that's with a scope of Microsoft. These are areas we have to be thinking about. And I think there's beginning to be a lot of best practices coming out. I did like that the FCC, Chairman Wheeler, they actually announced a white paper on cognitive disabilities recently, which we were able to contribute towards, and share things like the hiring program and other technologies like OneNote for Learning, which was a hack. It came out of our hackathon. We've had a great success with hacking here. You know, no light, pizza, and a lot of coffee for a few days, and you get a bunch of projects coming up. And it was a new thing for us. It came out 2014, and the first year the eye gaze wheelchair for ALS MND was created, and that hack is now a project that's really moving forward. And the second year it was OneNote for Learning. We didn't win this year, but I will share with you that we had, I think it was close to 600 people hacking on disability projects over the summer. So again, it just talks to some of that momentum. You know, OneNote for Learning, I think it is one of my favorite tools. I use it myself and with my own kiddo. I think it's got massive potential. And yes, there are plans to increase that and build it into some of the broader section of our Office suite. And so we'll be sharing more on that in coming weeks and months. But that's it's what we've found is just the difference it can make in reading ability with some of the kids that are using it, and some of the schools that are using it. And their words per minute just increase dramatically. With the way that system is structured, when you look at and you can tweak it and customize it depending on the capabilities of the person using it. So I think it came out of research, hardcore research on dyslexia. And I love that it's also an innovation that came out of disability that candidly could have implications for everyone in terms of learning how to read, which is the other potential with designing products using disability as the core. So That's the principle of inclusive design. You'll produce better products. So yes, there's a lot more to come on that one.
Okay, that sounds really encouraging. One thing that I'm very keen on is the idea that accessibility is personal, and therefore we effectively accessibility is, I think our previous guest Alistair from Acuity Design described it as extreme personalization. What I've noticed is that there is or has been a trend in technology to reduce the amount of personalization over the last few years because of the proliferation of different screen sizes. So you end up with responsive design. It responds to the different screen sizes, but it's not as responsive to the needs of users for customizing their experience. So I think we've turned a corner, but do you agree that we will, that there will be more chance to customize in future?
I think technology, for us, inclusive design and the principles around it, disability is part of being human, and what we've got to do is design for human. So I think in the past, disability was described, in fact, if you go to Webster's dictionary, it's described as being broken, impaired, which I vehemently disagree with. I'm many things, but I'm not impaired. I do sort of very vehemently believe that if you design for human, including the facets of disability, given that it is such a massive number, you won't just design for 1 billion, you'll design for 7 billion. Because ultimately, and I'm preaching to the choir here, but you put in those features and the ability for a person to switch off captioning, switch on captioning, turn on screen reader, use magnification, Cortana, whatever it might be. Those are useful not just for people with permanent disabilities, they're useful for those who are temporary or situational. And this is just a core basic. But so I agree and I disagree to a point. I think ultimately we all need to have the ability to know what to use. A lot of the things that we are looking at is the fact that technology, it can be hard to figure out what's in there if you don't know where it is. It's Windows key U, that's the ease of access on it. But not everyone knows about that. So how do we make it easy when suddenly you find yourself one-handed because you've broken an arm? How do we make sure that it's easy for you to know what's in the product? And let alone use the features that are there. So I think some of it is about how we look at those UIs and really figure out ease of use, true ease of use, not just the term ease of use around them. Some of it is about education. Some of it is about making sure that it's customizable, because everyone's use is individual. But again, I just think that's designing for human and use within it. I love that there are so many accessibility features now that are not accessibility. They don't have the word accessibility. People don't call Cortana accessibility or Siri. It's no, but that's all it bloody well is an accessibility.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
Yes,
it does.
No, that makes perfect sense. Deborah, you
I
have
want
another question?
to,
Yes.
well, more of a comment, or I want to, or kudos. I also know that Microsoft continues to support the IAAP, the International, I always have to think about it, Association of Accessibility Professionals. And your predecessor, Rob Sinclair, I know continues to be very engaged in that. And once again, the thing that is so encouraging about the Microsoft brand is that you seem to be engaged in so many conversations about, real inclusion, real access, not only technology and getting excited about the innovation and what technology can do, but as you were just noting, Jenny, it's interesting that some of the technology that's been created for individuals with disabilities is now mainstream for everyone. I know I see people using voiceover, you know, on the iPhone all the time, whether they have a disability or not. And I think it's exciting because I love technology. So I think it's exciting watching us, you know, the personalization certainly, but really make sure that technology works for humans and we all get the advantage of, you know, better usability because of the efforts that are being done by accessibility. So I'm very hopeful for, you know, what we're doing. And I also know that many vendors and many technologists and other companies, they look at Microsoft to lead. So when they see Microsoft being engaged with USBL and IAAP and the European Disability Forum and really being engaged in a meaningful way with the hackathons, I just love the leadership that I see continuing to come from Microsoft. So just really a comment that we notice all of the work that you are doing, Jenny, and we really, really applaud the efforts.
Well, thank you. I'll make sure my team feels that, and the folks on this around the company. I think the other one organization I'm incredibly excited about is Teach Access. You know, again, it kind of goes to my groove of you're better together. And so this is a Google, Yahoo, Facebook collaborative focused on education, and you know, my team is really working hard on some of the content to hopefully help with some of that. Which is making sure that accessibility is part of curriculum in universities, and we're going to be doing some work there to try some of that in some of the local universities here. So I think there's this area, there is so much opportunity from one end of the spectrum, which is making sure it's within product, and the other is empowering people with whatever technology they have to plug and play with the USB, with the AT segment, for any use. And there is multiple, I mean, I learn a new use case every day that a person has. And one of the things that I learned with Hector in Europe, you know, he comes from Toby and works a lot with physical disabilities and learning disabilities. So he's educating me on a lot of those they're not edge, they're just different use cases of technology. And so there really is just this massive spectrum and how we can empower across that. And all of that, inbox to AT and all between. So yeah, it's going to be a fun ride. A lot more to do, and I love that. There's so much opportunity here.
You are mentioning that there's the opportunity. There's so many opportunities today, but do you think that it's easy also to talk about accessibility in terms of convincing and converting people, or you still need to put that extra effort when you are trying to talk, highlighting the importance of creating inclusive products?
Good question.
So easy to convert people into this?
Yes.
Okay, disability is cool. And I think that's been some of, there is so much momentum here that's come from a techie, nerdy company getting really excited about what they can do. And there's no better use case in this environment. The iGate wheelchair was probably the part of that for some stuff before, where you take a great guy like Steve Gleason, who's an NFL player in Louisiana, and he was losing the ability to move his middle finger, and wanted to, you know, this is an NFL player. He wanted to move his own wheelchair, let alone talk with his wife and his family and have great communication. And it's tough. ALS is a miserable, horrible disease, or MND in the UK. And so that brought together 35 folks from around the company, I think one of whom, apart from me, knew anything about accessibility. None of the others did, but they brought their mad skills in and were like, what can we do? What can we do? And that was really the big groove, was it brought in people from robotics, from dev, from UX, from marketing, from across the company who knew nothing, because they were excited about the ability to do something empowering. And that for me is just the ultimate use case here. And I've seen that model repeat and repeat and repeat. And I think there's a lot more we can do.
I love the social impact, Jenny. I love the social impact. Very powerful.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Jenny. We are at the end of our half hour. We've overshot somewhat, but that's because it's been a great conversation. So thank you very much. I really look forward to you joining us tomorrow night on Twitter. I'm sure it's going to be a really lively chat.
I'm sure too. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.